there is a fascination in every economy. I think it's not just the Indian economy, it's also the American economy with raising large amounts of capital and creating large companies and sort of be famous, right? It's true. You raise large round, you're famous. You get your 15 minutes of fame, TechCrunch runs an article, which you bought, by the way, and so on. But it's not the only choice you have. You can actually create very good bootstrap companies, and that's something that people should pause and think about, right? One of the things that I can't speak exactly to the US market, but when I talk to entrepreneurs, I feel that I don't think they know what they're getting into when they raise venture capital. Exactly what that means for the next 5 to 10 years of their life, and what they might go through, and so on. So I wish there was a little bit more discussion around this. I wish we gave a little bit more prominence to smaller bootstrap companies who are doing very well. Which, by the way, it's not that something that I've been into, but I do know some. And how they were able to succeed. Like Paras, Chopra is very famous. He did a bootstrap, he got a pretty decent exit, and sort of now doing something else. So I think that's the first thing, right? Second thing is, I think, let's say you do decide to, like, regardless of which the direction you want to go down on. I think, as Rohit sort of alluded in the previous discussion you had, one of your primary challenges is distribution and GTM, right? And again, it is very obvious to people who've kind of done this before, but I don't think early first-time entrepreneurs in particular think about this enough. Uh, and they don't think it is core to what they're trying to do. I think they think that it is something secondary, that, oh, I'll figure it out. Then we build a great product, which is great. You need a great product. And then, the GTM will happen, right? Whereas actually, the other way to think is that GTM itself shapes your product, right? That you actually think about how you're going to land your customer and who that customer is, and then build your product in a way that is sort of oriented towards them, right? So to that extent, I think the people who are doing well here, I think, are people who crack that puzzle, right? So it would be a free app, right? That addresses something interesting, important, and sort of like gets traction. The so-called sort of the micro SaaS kind of a phenomenon. I think a lot of people are doing that pretty well, and they're sort of under the a lot of them are under the hoods. A lot of them are not busy. Just to give an example, I was reading, and a lot of these people in the US also. I don't know whether this was a US person or India person. I read about this person. He's like, what I do is I just go and do some research on what are popular problems or search queries in specific application areas. So, for example, the Jira or Zendesk or whatever, right? And then I go build an app that specifically solves that problem and put it on the marketplace of those platforms. And he does this as a rinse repeat manner, and he's making like a few million a month, just by doing that. So these strategies, I think, and clearly you can see that the person who has thought like this has put GTM at the heart of their product thinking. They actually didn't start with the product; they started with the GTM. What is the problem people face, and can I provide an app in the marketplace that solves that problem? And I'll do this repeat rinse for 20 different platforms, and let's see what happens. And it came out to be fantastic, right? Um, the So that I think fun. So I think the other thing that I see very much missing, and I think you guys, particularly Govind, you would appreciate this coming from the infrastructure background. Somehow I think this country did not exactly get the open source train. I think kind of missed out a little bit on the open source train. And so I talk to a lot of people who are doing infrastructure, which lends itself fantastically to open source, and they're not aware of it. They are thinking directly of jumping to the SaaS, that, I'll build whatever I'm building, I will build the SaaS version of it, sell it, and all this stuff. And that's fine. Eventually you have to do that. But for many domains, open source is a fantastic way of solving two key problems. One is the discovery problem, which is that, hey, I don't know what to build. Okay, fine. Let me put something out there. If somebody will write and they will come and tell me either this thing rocks or that it sucks, and this is actually what I wanted you to build, right? And so it is amazing from a discovery perspective. And B, even from a traction perspective, you should actually end up building something useful. A lot of the companies that you could never get in touch with, even inside them, would be using it. Now, that's not a commercial enterprise. It's a great way of validating your space, figuring out where the value exists, And getting inside many of the companies that you otherwise would spend millions and millions of dollars trying to get inside. So I think, we are underplaying, in my opinion, because I'm just basing this based on like numerous companies and people I talk to. I think there is very, very little realization of the power of the open source play, why it is important, why it continues to be pertinent even in a freemium model world, right? So another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that freemium is great, but let's say you're in a market where freemium already exists, right? So let's say you wanted to build the next task management system, right? And you want to beat Asana. Well, Asana is already free, right? So you cannot beat Asana at freemium. It's not going to happen, right? But guess what? There's a lot of companies who don't want to use SaaS, or who have the religion that I'm going to run my own stack. Let's not argue about whether it's rational and so on. The thing is that a certain percentage of the market has stabilized into that concept. Now, if you are looking for a niche, an entry point, and you can't out Asana, well, maybe you can do something different that they're never going to do, right? And that can give you a different kind of a toehold. It doesn't mean that you build something as big as them, or that's the best way of solving it, or that's the biggest possible play. But you are looking for an entry point, and this can give you an entry point.